Hi everyone, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2020 reading stats and just a general end of the year wrap up. So this year was pretty crazy for me because I started my Bookstagram and then I decided I wanted to start my BookTube channel. So this is my first year creating content, and I've been really enjoying myself. I've been having a lot of fun with it. So I'm really happy with this year because I just have been having a lot of fun creating bookish content. And this year is also the year that I have read the most books that I've ever read in a year by far. I always set my Goodreads reading goal or reading challenge to 52 books for the year because I figured one book a week is pretty reasonable. And so far, in all the years that I've been using Goodreads, I have completed that challenge or accomplished that goal. And this year I did it by more than 3 times. I read 177 books this year. So that's pretty crazy to me because I've always wanted to break 100 books in a year. And when I was already at 52 by April, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I could actually break 100 this year. And so I did, but then I kept reading and kept reading and kept reading, and I got to 177. So not quite to the 200 mark, but still way past my goal, way past 100 books. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'm still pretty amazed that I managed to read that much in a single year. And then for total pages read this year, I read about 55,663 pages. And I say about because I DNF'd some books this year, so I got several pages into them. One book I got over 400 pages into it when I decided to DNF it. So those pages don't count towards this page total. This is just of all the books that I completed reading this year, that's about the page amount that I read. And yeah, like I said, I DNF'd some books. I ended up DNFing about 9 books that I can remember. Obviously, like I said, I'm not counting those pages that I read in those books. So my favorite book that I read this year, if you watched my favorite books of 2020 video, you would know that my number 1 book was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Some people call it Crescent City. Crescent City is the series name, but it's bigger on the book, so everybody thinks that that's the title. But House of Earth and Blood is the title of this book, and this was Sarah's new adult fantasy series. So this was book 1 and I loved it. I did a whole spoilery reading vlog, which I'll link up in the cards over here if you are interested in watching that. But this was my favorite book of 2020. I had in my favorite books of 2020, my top 3, I had such a hard time ranking them because I feel like they all could have been number 1. So I settled on this one because I don't know, it was just more intricate, I feel like, than the other ones, and I just really like Sarah J. Maas's writing. But the other 2 books, which was Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco and The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, those were also amazing books, and I could have easily chosen them as my number 1, but I had to pick one, and so I picked House of Earth and Blood. My least favorite book that I read this year, not including the ones that I DNF'd because obviously I dislike them enough to not finish them, but of all the ones that I've completed and read, my least favorite book was The Girl in the Mirror by Rose Carlyle. It's like a thriller suspense book about these twin sisters who go out on a boat or whatever to move this yacht from one place to another, and one of the sisters falls in and gets lost at sea, and when the other sister lands at the port, she kind of pretends to be her sister and kind of takes over her life. And I just didn't care for this at all. It was very unrealistic, and all of the twists and stuff, I was I don't know, I just didn't think that this was even remotely believable, and I really was annoyed for most of the book, but it was entertaining enough, I suppose, that I was just curious as to what the ending was, so I didn't DNF it. It's a pretty short book. It's under 300 pages, I think. Yeah. So I just wanted to see what the ending was going to be and what the climax was going to be. So I did finish it, but I should have just DNF'd it when I started feeling super annoyed with it. But yeah, this was definitely my least favorite book of 2020. So now let's talk about the ratings that I gave books. So my average rating was, I think on Goodreads it said it was 4 stars, just under 4. It was like a 3.98 rating or something like that. So it rounded it up to like a 4-star rating. And going through and like tallying all of the star ratings that I did to rank them, yeah, it's pretty obvious that I gave a lot of books very high ratings, and I made a video earlier in the year about like how I rate books and how I kind of want to be a little more strict, I guess, with giving out those high ratings, because I feel like if I enjoy a book a lot, then I just give it 5 stars. And I kind of want to be a little more selective with giving books 5 stars, because I gave out a lot of 5 stars this year, but I also read a lot of good books. So I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. So here's the actual ratings of each category, each star category of what I gave. So there was only one book that I decided not to give a rating at all, and it was a nonfiction memoir book that I just felt like it was kind of cheap to give it a rating, so I just decided not to rate it at all. And then I only gave one book 1 star. Usually if it's gonna be below a 2-star, I DNF it, and I'm just like, you know what, I'm not enjoying it, so I'm not gonna finish it. But there was one book that it was a play that I read for a readathon challenge, so I had to finish it, and it was like short enough that it was fine to finish it, but I just hated every second of it, honestly. So I ended up giving that one a 1 star. And then I didn't give any books a 1.5 star. So like I said, if it's not gonna be at least a 2, typically I'll DNF it, so I don't usually give books ratings under 2 star. And then I gave 4 books a 2 star, and I gave 3 books a 2.5 star. I gave 22 books a 3 star, so right in the middle there, and then 12 books a 3.5 star. I gave 71 books a 4 star, so that was definitely my most common star rating that I gave books, was a 4 star, which is good because I did have a really good reading year, so I'm not upset about that number at all, but that's a lot of 4 stars. And I gave 11 books a 4.5 star, and then I gave 51 books a 5 star. So that's a lot of 5 stars. Granted, I did reread a lot of books this year, and a lot of the books that I reread, I've given 5 stars previously, so it was kind of like double dipping on some of those if I read them in 2020 and then reread them later in the year, which did happen this year a lot. So that number is a little bit skewed because of the number of rereads that I did this year, and so now you can kind of see like why I would like to be more selective with my 5-star reads, but I had a great reading year, so it is what it is. So like I said, I did reread a lot this year. I reread 25 books, and that number seems high to me because I feel like I didn't read that many rereads, but like thinking about it now, I guess I did, but that number seems pretty high, so I'm happy about that. I like to reread books because it's just nice to return to the same story and the same characters that I'm already familiar with. It's very comforting to me. So yeah, hopefully I can continue to reread that many books in a year because I love to reread books. Then let's talk about the longest and shortest books that I read this year, or shortest book that I read this year. Goodreads said that my average page amount that I read was about 314 pages per book based on like the total pages read and the number of books read or whatever. That's the average page amount. But the longest book that I read this year was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. It's 870 pages, so that was the longest book that I read this year. And then the shortest book that I read this year was We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is basically just like her TED Talk speech in book form, and I very thoroughly enjoyed this. It's about 48 pages of actual content, 52 pages in the whole little teeny tiny book. So 48 pages for the shortest book. All right, so now let's talk about new to me authors that have become new favorite authors. The first one I'm going to talk about is Alice Oseman. I have read 5 of Alice Oseman's books this year. At least I think I read Radio Silence this year. Pretty sure I did. But the Heartstopper graphic novel series, there are 3 volumes here. The 4th one is coming out in May of 2021, I believe. And these were so adorable. I loved them so much. I even reread them again later in the year. So that was another one where I kind of like double dipped on the 5-star rating. And then Radio Silence, and then also Loveless. So I still have a few books of hers that I haven't read yet. So just looking at the back of Loveless, they're down here. Solitaire, I still need to read. I Was Born for This. This Winter, I think, is a little novella. So I still have several that I want to read from Alice Oseman, but these 5 just made me fall in love with her writing, and in her graphic novel series, her artwork is really cool. So she's definitely a new favorite author for me. The next one I'm going to talk about is Riley Sager. I read all 4 of Riley Sager's books this year, and I loved all of them. They are a wild, fun ride. A lot of times people say that the first 2 books aren't that good, so I went into them with like lower expectations and like I just want to read them to find out what they are. And if I don't like them, I don't like them. But I ended up really liking them. I mean, I really like his other 2 books as well, but like I liked all 4 of these. I thought these were great and thrilling and suspenseful, and I don't know, I really liked them. So yeah, if I can like all of an author's books, then you know that they're a new favorite author for me, and I'm very eagerly anticipating his 5th book, which is releasing in July of 2021. And then next up, another new favorite author for me is going to be Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman is Swedish, and so his works are translated, but I read Anxious People and absolutely fell in love with his writing style, and so I was very eager to pick up other books by him. So I picked up Beartown and then its sequel, Us Against You. These are the only 3 that I've read by Fredrik Backman, but I have loved them all, and I'm very excited to pick up his other books. There are several that I haven't read yet that I've got my eye on. Specifically, the next one I want to pick up is A Man Called Uva. But yeah, I definitely want to get through all of his backlist, and then there is supposed to be a 3rd book in the Beartown series that comes out in 2021. There's not a date set yet, but it says published in 2021. So hopefully that'll be coming out. I'm not sure if it'll be published in Sweden in 2021, and then we'll have to wait for the translated work. But hopefully it's coming out so that I can read it because he's definitely a new favorite author. I just love his writing. So now let's break it down by age category. So I had 3 age categories that I assigned books to. One being middle grade, then young adult, and then adult. Some of the books that I read didn't fall into an age category, like they just could have been read by any age category, so I just didn't even include them in this tally, like poetry or memoirs or anything like that. Like I just didn't include them because I didn't want to assign them to an age category, if that makes sense. But the first category, middle grade, I read 3 books in the middle grade age category this year. I'm not a big middle grade reader. I personally usually go for the higher age categories, I guess we're gonna say. So I didn't read a very much middle grade this year at all, and that's pretty typical. Then I read 74 books in the young adult age category, which is kind of surprising to me because I thought I definitely read more adult books this year, which I mean I did. I read more adult books, but young adult was pretty close. So that one surprised me. And then I read 83 books in the adult category. And then whatever number is left over from 177, that's the ones that I didn't assign an age category to. But yeah, 83 adult books this year. So that seems to be like the trend of where my reading is going. I'm either going to read, a little bit of young adult, but probably mostly adult. I don't know. There are some young adult books that I just enjoy reading them. Some of them just feel kind of cheesy and too young for me, but some of them are just written so well that I enjoy the young adult age category. All right, now we're gonna break it down by genre. So I have a lot of different genres here that I have, categorized these books into. And then there was one category, miscellaneous, where I just didn't know where these books fit in, so I just kind of put them in there. So the first genre that I have here is fantasy. And I read 25 fantasy books this year. Normally that number would be a lot higher because fantasy is my jam. So this year I read some fantasy earlier in the year, and then I just was really feeling that contemporary vibe for most of the year, like thrillers, just contemporary romances. So I feel like that kind of is split up here. But yeah, normally I read a lot more fantasy than I did this year. Like I said, I started the year reading some fantasy, and now I'm ending the year reading some fantasy, and I'm back in the fantasy mood. But for a huge chunk of the year, I just wasn't in the mood to read fantasy. But 25 books, that's still quite a lot. Then the sci-fi genre, I read 5 books in the sci-fi genre. Sci-fi isn't super my thing, but there are some sci-fi books that are very intriguing to me and like I want to read them. But yeah, that's pretty typical. Magical realism, I read 19 books in that genre this year, so that again is not surprising. I really, really love magical realism books. That's something that I have discovered this year as something that I really, really like to read, and I would very much like to read more of. Romance, I only read 7 books in the romance genre, which again is another surprising one because I thought over the summer I was reading a lot more romance, but I guess I must have kind of lumped them in this next category here, which is contemporary. And I read 16 books in the contemporary genre. So I guess these ones, if they're not super romance heavy, even if they had a romance in them, I put them in the contemporary category instead of just the straight romance. I guess I put romance if that was the main point of the book, was the romance. Then I read 6 literary fiction books this year, and I read 19 thriller/mystery books. I thought that I had read more thriller mystery books than I actually did, I suppose. I think around August, September-ish, October-ish, like that beginning of fall point in the year is when I read the most of them because I was just in the mood for them and that's all I wanted to read, and I was just zoned in on thriller mysteries. And then I actually read 10 horror books this year, which is new for me because I don't really read very much horror. I'm not really into like gory horror, but that like, thriller, terror, like what's going on, haunted house kind of thing. I was really feeling that this year. Then I read 3 historical fiction books, and I read 3 dystopian books. This next category is definitely the one with the most books in it, and that's graphic novels. I read 47 graphic novels this year, which is crazy and also like makes sense because I read so many books this year, and obviously some of them are graphic novels, which makes it easier for that number to climb. But 47 graphic novels, that's quite a lot. I've got my little graphic novel collection over here to my left, so I didn't put them into categories. I could have like split them up into like a contemporary graphic novel, a science fiction graphic novel, or whatever, but I just like lumped them all together, just graphic novels, even though that's not technically a genre, but whatever, I'm counting it. Then I read 2 poetry books this year, and this next genre is memoirs / like essays, I guess, and I read 8 of that kind of like nonfiction, but not like, I don't know how to explain these. So yeah, like memoirs, and then like an essay book, like I'm trying to think of an example. Like Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions by Gloria Steinem. Like it's kind of a memoir, but kind of an essay about feminism, that kind of thing. That's what this category is to me. And then the catch-all miscellaneous category, I had 7 books in there that I just couldn't figure out where they went in any of the other categories. So 7 of those. So now let's talk about the methods that I used to read. So physical, audiobook, or a combination of the two. I read 73 books physically. That includes graphic novels because like they don't have audiobooks for them. At least I don't think they do. And if they did, I wouldn't want that anyways because I would want to see all the art and stuff. And then I read 4 just strictly audiobooks. And then I read 100 of a combination of the 2, physical and audiobooks. So either I listened to the audiobook while following along in the book, or I listened to the audiobook while doing things like doing chores around the house or commuting to work. And then I would read physically when I had like a chance to put my eyes on the book, And I definitely knew that I was doing a combination of the 2 this year more than I have in any other year because I was reading so much. So like I was constantly reading. So when I was doing things that like chores or driving or whatever, I was listening to an audiobook, which would get me farther in the book, which would mean I read faster, which means then I read more. So now I'm going to talk about how many books I read each month. I have my reading journal here, and I have this little chart that I drew up, which I can pop a picture up on the screen of this little chart here. So in January, I read 14 books. In February, I read 12 books. March was my highest month. I read 22 books, followed by April, which I read 19 books. May, I read 12 books. June, I read 15 books. July, I read 18 books. August, I read 19 books. September, I read 11 books. October, I read 13 books. November, I read 11 books. And then lastly, December, I read 10 books, which was my least amount read in a month this year, which is still crazy to me because 10 books is a lot. And for that to be my least amount of books read in the year just shows you like how many books I actually read in 2020. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about is my remaining TBR. So I have been trying to get my physical TBR down. I don't like having a lot of books on my physical TBR because it kind of stresses me out. So I have gotten it down to 5 books on my physical TBR, and that's kind of like the sweet spot. That's kind of where I want to stay. No more than 5 books on my physical TBR sounds good to me. And then the number of books on my Goodreads TBR, so books I want to read, I just don't own yet, I have 40 books on that Goodreads TBR. And again, that just feels pretty manageable to me. I like that number because it's not too much. Like I've seen some people have like over 600 books that they want to read, and to me that just is crazy. So yeah, those are all of my reading stats for 2020 and my little reading wrap up for the year. This was definitely the best reading year that I have had ever, and it's just been a great year for reading and bookish things for me, like as a whole, like because again, like I said, my Bookstagram and my YouTube channel started this year, and I read so many books, and I actually kept a reading journal and was having some fun with it. I don't know, I just had a great bookish year all around. So I would love it if you would leave in the comments some of your reading stats. I'd just be very curious to know at least how many books that you read this year and what your favorite book of the year was. And if you like this video, you can let me know by liking and subscribing down below. I would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you all in my next one. Bye.